Our first guest for today, House Assistant Majority Leader Congressman Jude Acidre. Sir, magandang hapon and welcome back to Storycon.
Magandang hapon, Kong.
Hi, Congressman.
Sir, nakamute po kayo.
Nakamute po kayo yata.
Magandang hapon
Yun.
po sa lahat.
There you go, sir.
Sir
Okay.
Ed, Sec Ronald, Miss Ami, magandang hapon po.
Sir, totoo ba magaling kayo sa math?
Hindi ho, kaya ako nga po nagpolitiko eh.
Ang bilis ang sagot eh.
Mabilis.
Without any hesitation at all eh.
Kaya po ako nag-pulsay sa UP kasi mas kulang po yung required na math.
Ako rin,
Wala pala pinagawa po sa isa't.
Hindi ako, kaya ako nag-journalism.
Kaya
Kaya ako nag-journalism dahil umiiwas ako sa math.
Teka, you wanna ask you about let's go na lang to among other things yung confidential funds na mga bagong pangalan lumitaw.
May mga bagong pangalan pala na lumitaw. Kong no? Dun
si Hanilet, saka si ano.
Pati si Ewan lumabas eh.
Pati si Fiona nandun So, wala akong sinasabi na
Shrek yun, Shrek.
wala akong sinasabi
Si
na
Shrek.
may kinalaman si Vice President doon,
Kung talaga,
sa Fiona. Pero nakakatuwa na may mga Fiona na pangalan. No, buti na lang, walang Manny Mugato na pangalan doon.
Hindi na kailangan ng pseudonym eh. But sir, ano yung findings niyo? I know may mga bago lumabas na mga pangalan, pero yung listahan kasi ng pangalan, humahaba lang ng humahaba, but are we finding anything new aside from the new names?
Well, ako at the moment, I'm actually more interested who are the real persons in the list. I think to focus on the fictitious name is just to overstate the obvious na, no? Alam na natin na hindi totoong mga tao, kaya siguro ituon na lang natin yung pansin sa mga totoong tao doon. At kung sino man ang totoong tao doon, baka pwede nating ma-identify at tanungin, nakatanggap ba talaga kayo?
Yes, sir.
Or
Yes, sir.
meron ba talagang undertaking in whatever way to support the intelligence or anumang efforts on the part. Ang mahirap lang dito, to be honest, Ami and Sec Ronald, ang mahirap lang dito, ang pagdikit talaga when it refers now to the mandate of the Office of the Vice President. Kasi kung if this were a military agency or office, or it's the Office of the Vice President or an office that's attached to any of the uniform service, it would have been very easy to determine the propriety of such operations because germane sa nature ng organization yung national security, which is apparently not the case for the Office of the Vice President because hindi naman saklaw ng tanggapan ng trabaho bilang pangalawang pangulo o di kaya bilang kalihim ng edukasyon ang nagkaroon ng ganitong mga intelligence operations. I think that is the more critical issue. And putting that in context, then you will have to ask, why are there fictitious names? Or at the very least, yung mga totoong tao dito, sino ba to sila? Ano ba ang naging participation nila? At itong mga activities na to, if ever, how do they connect the Office of the Vice President with the national security operations or intelligence gathering kung tawagin nila, di ba?
Yes,
So, it actually for me adds up to more questions.
Yes, sir. Sir, if I may, sir.
With how things are.
Yes, sir. If I may, sir, kasi we talked earlier to former COA Commissioner Heidi Mendoza. Tandaan mo yung when we were talking to her before, kasi si Heidi Mendoza before sa COA would be the one in charge of looking through the confidential fund liquidations kasi it goes way back Now, ang sabi ni Heidi Mendoza na ang gawain nila dati was pinapayagan naman daw ang pseudonyms o yung mga fake names doon sa documentation. However,
Meron silang listahan.
in-emphasize ni Heidi Mendoza, however, required ang agency with the confidential funds to keep a journal of the real names. And that is deposited, I think, with several offices, including the Speaker's Office, the Senate President, and the President, as according to COA Circular number 1 of 2015. So may ganun pong sistema na dapat merong listahan talaga ng real names that would as a matter of transparency, di ba? Para may accountability. Otherwise kasi parang binigyan mo na yung pera, you can do whatever you want.
Tama Sir Ed, that's in the joint circular actually governing the utilization of confidential funds. That's why I'm saying yung fictitious name, until siguro will be able to prove it, the burden of proof is on the part of the Office of the Vice President. Siyempre, they will have to establish kung anong klaseng operation. And that begs the question, bakit ganun kalawak with almost 500 informants, if I'm not mistaken, were involved in intelligence gathering? So, kaya nga, bigyan din natin ng pansin yung mga totoong pangalan. There are about 200 daw na hindi na may apparently, no, if I'm not mistaken,
May birth records.
they have records with PSA, so that we can also understand. Kasi it would appear to be very convenient to invoke that there might be somewhere out there a list or what do you call this, a ledger or something that contains the reconciled names or the anong tawag nito, yung mga pseudonyms kasi pinapayagan naman. But it begs the even bigger question of what are these people up to? What kind of intelligence were they actually gathering, no? And for me, moving forward, how does that correlate to the function of the Office of the Vice President? Because I had all these questions even
Yes, sir.
during the good government hearings, no, in Congress. Bakit ganito ang level ng involvement nung Office of the Secretary of Education, as well as the Office of the Vice President to warrant an operation this big?
Kong, kasama doon sa joint circular, dapat yung speaker ay may kopya ng mga tunay na pangalan. In your interaction with the speaker, meron ba siyang nababanggit na yung office niya ay hawak itong mga tunay na pangalan?
O nagsasabit ba sa kanya?
Oo.
I cannot speak for the speaker no, and the office of the speaker. But what I can tell you now is during the entire course of the deliberations at the Committee on Good Government, there has been no indication that such a ledger exists. Kasi that would have been the best, kung sabihin na lang natin,
Defense.
justification on their part, no? But there has been no indication, there has been no report that such document has been released to or submitted as required by the joint circular.
Congressman, balita namin ngayon from the House, i-scrutinize nyo daw about 800 names. I-verify nyo with the PSA. Pag na-verify nyo or hindi nyo na-verify, ano yung gagawin nyo dun sa information? Idadagdag ba yun dun sa impeachment? Magre-recommend ba kayo na mag-file ng graft or plunder? Ano bang balak dun?
Well, I think no, I cannot preempt the decision of the committee, of the leadership of the committee. But right now, what is crucial with determining the identities of these people is for us to have a better understanding how the funds were used and to whom these funds were disbursed. We're talking almost of 1 billion pesos here, no? So definitely, it's in the public interest to know kung sino yung nakatanggap, and that's what we're trying to establish by referring this to PSA, whether this fictitious name. Kasi lalong palala ng palala yung mga pangalan na ginagamit mas nakaka-intriga. And at the same time, determine also the propriety of these disbursements. Kung meron ba talagang ginawa, ano yung consideration, o ano yung konteksto, yung kabuuan ng operation sa pinag-uusapan. And for whatever purpose it may serve, I think, of course, without preempting the committee, these are public funds, and therefore, government officials who had custody of this, including the Vice President and the other offices or other officials of their offices, these respective offices, should be made accountable, whether during the impeachment or before the courts, no, for possible malversation of public funds or even plunder.
Last week,
Oversight function nyo to, no? May naiisip mo ba rin, kasi medyo matagal na itong investigation nyo. Meron na rin ba kayong nabubuong mga balak na recommendation for legislation, although you're running out of time, no? 19th Congress is running out of time. Meron ba kayong nababalak na i-propose na legislation?
There is already, ma'am, draft legislation that has been filed, I believe, surrounding the role of the special disbursing officers. I'm not so sure if they filed already, but I know there was a bill that was related to the use of confidential funds. But nonetheless, considering with the time element that we have, it's already safe to say, no, that there is general consensus that we really have to review the process and the mechanisms for governing the utilization, the regulations governing the utilization of confidential funds. And I'm looking forward that in the next Congress, such a comprehensive legislation will be put in place.
Congressman, in relation sa pinag-uusapan natin, may lumabas na news last week na yung mga security officers na naka-assign kay Vice President Sara will be charged with anong kaso ba yung charge sa kanila? Basta in relation
Para makita ko niyo.
basta in relation dito sa confidential fund. Dahil
disbursement.
mukhang sila yung nag-disburse eh. Court martial. Mukhang kakasuhan sila ng court martial. Meron ba kayong alam tungkol dyan? Dahil yan ay directly in relation dito sa pinag-uusapan natin na confidential funds.
Sir Ronald, I do not have direct information of whether cases will be filed before the court martial sa AFP, no, surrounding the use of these funds. To be honest, I don't have any idea. But the culpability of this individual, the accountability of this military personnel, yung dalawang colonel, no, na sa kanila tinurn over yung pera. I stand by my earlier statements during the hearings that they have to be subject to investigation, and possible cases of technical malversation or even plunder will have to be filed against them. Kasi klarong-klaro naman po. Alam naman natin ang regulations surrounding cash advances, regarding the use of confidential funds, and we know how critical the role of the special disbursement officer, and this role cannot be delegated. This role cannot be assigned without the proper accountabilities. The fact that they turned over the amounts, the cash to the military personnel, military officers under the Office of the Vice President or the Secretary of Education, by itself, for me, constitutes already possible criminal act. Kasi that defeats the whole point of accountability. Kaya nga meron tayong binabayaran na bond, kaya nga bonded officers ang mga SDOs eh. And for them to turn over without the similar assurance or guarantee of accountability is plainly for me unauthorized. They should have done it in the first place.
Pero nagtataka kami ni Ed, Kong, bakit parang hindi namin sila nakita sa mga hearings ng Quadcom? Pinatawag ba sila?
Hindi ako sigurado because hindi pa naman technically, hindi sa good governance Secretary Ron, hindi po sa Quadcom.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to believe that the deliberations in the Good Government Committee hindi pa naman tapos, ano? And there are many questions. I think it was just a matter of planning and strategizing the course of the discussions. Kasi, syempre, with all deference to the military, they're also bound by their own internal mechanisms. But nonetheless, that does not mean that we are simply absolving them.
Sir Pablo, last question from me. So, could we at least establish with certainty if there is such a ledger or logbook or journal kung saan sinulat doon yung mga totoong pangalan ng mga totoong tao na supposedly tumanggap ng pera as required by the Joint Circular? I mean, di ba, I suppose that the VP's office has to be asked whether or not they really did make a journal or ledger or logbook and submitted it. At the very least, on one side, pwedeng ganun. On the other side po, baka also we can ask whether the leaders of either Chamber of Congress also received the sealed documents as required quarterly by the Joint Circular. In other words, sir, kasi parang tayong nabitin dun sa na all these questions about these names na mukhang peke, pero hindi na napuso dun sa bahagi na dapat may ledger, nagsabit ba o hindi?
Okay. Sir Ed, I cannot answer for the Office of the Speaker, as I earlier
Yes, sir.
mentioned,
Understand,
no?
sir.
If they have in their custody such ledgers. We like to believe the reports are with them, and I think there are guidelines on how to go about it. Pero as far as I know from my own experience in the committee and hearing out all the witnesses, there has been no mention on the part of the concerned resource persons from the Office of the Vice President or from DepEd na meron ang ganon. And honestly, if you ask me, at this point, it would be very convenient for them to produce it kung it would appear to be a very convenient excuse for them if they release it at this point. Kasi dapat nun pa lang nila sinabi. 'Di ba? So if they say at a certain point, no, we have the ledger, for me, that's already a very
Pahabol na lang.
convenient excuse, no? And we will have to consider whether these are actual or real-time ledgers, or we have to establish the veracity. Because in the course of the testimonies before and in the course of the hearings in the House, there has been no mention to such ledgers being available.
Huling tawad na lang, Kong. Alam ko, may pupuntahan pa kayo mahalagang pulong,
Okay na po,
no?
okay na po.
Huling tawad na lang. Bukas kasi may TRICOM hearing uli tungkol dito sa fake news, etc. No? At nandun kayo nung nakaraang TRICOM meeting. Actively nag-participate kayo. Balita ko nga ay hindi kayo makakadulo bukas. Pero ano ba yung magiging kakaibahan nitong TRICOM hearing bukas at yung mga previous TRICOM meeting tungkol sa fake news? No?
To be honest, no, I wasn't part of the briefing today. Hindi ako masyadong updated kung ano magiging points to raise for tomorrow. But I'd like to believe that we will remain consistent to the earlier intention, the main intention of the hearing, and that is to make sure that we are able to address yung privilege speech ni Congressman Barbers, especially with the preparation of fake news.
Congressman?
Yes.
Hello po.
Yeah.
Oo nga,
May
meron
pabulata si
pa,
Ami.
tuloy pa po.
Sir,
Okay. And I think at this point, no, they will be more focused on the possible legislative actions that will be taken. But I was in one of these discussions, one thing that I really raised before the committee and the other committee members in our discussions on the side is really to start establishing the framework in which we will have to basically frame the entire legislative proposal that we're going to make. Kasi it's, as I've been very careful, we have to make sure that this does not impede in any way the freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Nonetheless, careful balancing act must be considered. So we're looking along the lines of the initiatives na ginawa ng European Union, who have actually been medyo advanced na in terms of regulating and creating legislation for social media use, including misinformation, disinformation, is creating a framework kung if we have the same understanding of what, for example, social media is all about, for example, making a common understanding on the accountability or the definition of what an influencer or what constitutes an influencer. And on the basis of that framework, create legislation that will not only regulate but actually ensure that the rights also of users are also protected. Kasi social media naman cannot be all bad. We have to take note that fake news that's being, or disinformation or misinformation that's being shared in social media is the anomaly, not social media itself. So hindi naman natin pinagbabawalan ang tao na magsulat o magpahayag ng kanilang saloobin on social media. But the question is, are those that are resulting in harmful consequences? Like for example, if there's a threat already to national security, if it's starting to be a threat to public order and security, or for example, if it's damaging the reputational reputational integrity of our institutions, I think these are the things that we need to draw the line.
Okay. Sir, si Ami ata may gustong ihabol kung papayag,
Yes.
kung papayag ba
Kaya
kayo.
habol ko lang yung yung sa good government. Mga ilan pa kayang hearing yon? Yung balak nila.
So far, no. I think with at right now, no, with the elections coming and of course with the impeachment, I really am not sure how do we proceed with the hearings in good government. We're still waiting for more instructions coming from the respective chairpersons of the committee.
Okay.
Okay, maraming salamat sir for joining us this afternoon sa Storycon. House Assistant Majority Leader and Tingog Party List Congressman Jude Acidre. Sir, thank you for joining us today.
Maraming salamat, Congressman.
Thank you,
Magandang hapon po.
Congressman.
Magandang hapon.